Did you know the Supreme Court could shape Fed Chair Kevin Warsh's early tenure?
Today's major Trump economic story centers on the Federal Reserve. Reuters reports that Federal Reserve Chair Kevin Warsh's early tenure is being shaped by a Supreme Court fight over Trump's attempted firing of Fed Governor Lisa Cook. The case could determine how much protection Federal Reserve officials have from presidential removal pressure. This matters because the Federal Reserve is supposed to operate independently from direct political pressure. Presidents can nominate Fed leaders, but once they are in office, the central bank's credibility depends on the idea that interest rate decisions are based on economic conditions, not political demands. Reuters reports that lower courts have supported Cook's challenge and allowed her to remain on the Fed board while the legal fight continues. A Supreme Court ruling in her favor could strengthen protections for Warsh and other Fed policymakers. A ruling favoring Trump could open the door to more presidential pressure over monetary policy. This is bigger than one Fed governor. This is about whether a president can pressure the central bank by threatening the people who set interest rates. The timing is critical. Warsh is also preparing for his debut at the European Central Bank's annual forum in Portugal. Reuters reports that markets will be watching his communication style closely because Warsh has rejected traditional forward guidance and argues markets should respond to economic conditions rather than Fed signaling. That approach could bring flexibility, but it can also create uncertainty. When markets do not know what the Fed is likely to do, borrowing costs can move sharply. Mortgage rates, bond yields, business loans, and stock prices all respond to expectations. For everyday Americans, this is not abstract. Fed independence affects mortgage rates, credit card rates, car loans, retirement accounts, and inflation. Trump has previously pushed for lower rates, and the Fed now faces inflation still above its target, according to Reuters. That means Warsh has to navigate two pressures at once: market expectations and presidential expectations. What to watch next? 1. How the Supreme Court rules on the Cook firing dispute. 2. Whether Warsh signals independence or alignment with Trump's rate cut pressure. 3. Whether markets react calmly to Warsh's no-forward guidance approach. 4. Whether inflation data forces the Fed to stay tighter than Trump wants. Bottom line, Trump's influence over the Fed is now moving through the courts, the markets, and the central bank's leadership. The outcome could shape interest rates and Fed independence for years.
Did you know Trump asked the Supreme Court to end bond hearings for many detained immigrants?
Today's major immigration story. The Trump administration has asked the U.S. Supreme Court to approve a policy allowing the government to detain certain immigrants indefinitely without bond hearings while they fight deportation. Reuters reports the request follows a lower court ruling that found the policy violated due process rights. According to Reuters, the administration is asking the court to resolve a dispute over whether immigrants arrested inside the United States, including some who have lived in the country for years, can be treated as applicants for admission and placed in mandatory detention without bond. That legal classification matters. If the government wins, more detainees could be held without the chance to ask an immigration judge for release while their cases proceed. In plain language, the question is this: can the government lock people up during deportation cases without giving them a bond hearing? Supporters of Trump's policy argue that detention helps ensure people show up for immigration proceedings and can be removed if ordered deported. They say the government needs stronger tools to enforce immigration law at scale. Critics argue that indefinite detention without bond violates basic due process, especially for people who have deep ties to the United States, families, jobs, and years of residence. Reuters reports that the current case involves immigrants arrested in Michigan who had lived in the U.S. for years. The administration's request comes during a broader expansion of Trump's immigration crackdown. The Supreme Court has already allowed the administration to end deportation protections for Haitians and Syrians and revive tougher asylum restrictions, giving Trump major recent wins on immigration. That means this case could become the next major building block in Trump's immigration agenda. What to watch next? 1. Whether the Supreme Court agrees to hear the case quickly. 2. whether the court allows the policy while litigation continues. 3. Whether detention populations rise if Trump wins. 4. Whether immigrant rights groups file broader constitutional challenges. 5. Whether the issue becomes central to midterm campaign messaging. Bottom line, Trump is asking the Supreme Court to give his administration more detention power. Supporters call it enforcement. Critics call it indefinite detention without due process. The court's answer could reshape immigration custody across the country.